Okay, so you've probably seen the headline that was making the rounds online recently. Huang Yang Tiantian, who's a 17-year-old actress, seen wearing earrings valued at, get this, 2.3 million yuan.
Wow. Yeah, that definitely catches your eye.
Right. It absolutely stops you in your tracks. And, well, predictably, it kicked off a huge amount of discussion online. Lots of people wondering, where does that kind of money come from?
Exactly.
And that's precisely what we're going to try and unpack today. We've got a couple of key sources, a news report from Hangzhou Daily, and also an opinion piece from Sohu.
And they offer some, well, quite different takes on the whole thing.
They really do.
Yeah.
Interesting perspectives, sometimes even conflicting. So our mission, really, is to dig into this, understand these different layers of information, and, figure out what they might act.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? How something that starts as like a story about celebrity jewelry can just spiral outwards into this much broader look at wealth, public perception, even, bigger questions about social fairness. The initial buzz was all about that huge price tag.
Of course.
But almost straight away, the conversation shifted, didn't it? It moved to the source of the wealth, especially when those early reports linked her.
Exactly. The Hangzhou Daily piece, it did touch on that initial chatter online. The questions being raised about appropriateness, how someone with a reported civil servant background could, afford items that extravagant.
Right.
But then, very quickly, Huang Yang Tiantian's agency, JXC Media, they put out a statement. Okay, let's break this down. They said public scrutiny is important for social justice, which is, a pretty strong thing to say.
Quite a statement.
But they also condemned what they called malicious rumors. And they asked the public, basically, not to spread unverified stuff. The article also gave the basics on her. Born Shenzhen, 2007, started acting 2017. It even mentioned her role as young Chu Kiao in Princess.
So still very young, but getting noticed in a big way.
Yeah.
And that agency statement, while it's sort of standard PR in some ways, it really does highlight how sensitive this whole issue is. But what's, I think, particularly revealing is the deeper dive that the Sohu article attempts.
Yeah.
It tries to go beyond that simple civil servant father narrative and hints at, well, a much more complex fence.
Absolutely. The Sohu piece really delves into the father's background. And here's where it gets really interesting, They suggest his history is more complicated than just being a regular civil servant in Yan. They point to his role way back in 2011. He was apparently the director of the Sichuan Charity Federation office.
Okay, that's significant.
Right. Because that position, it would involve managing quite a bit of charity money and, importantly, overseeing.
So potential for influence there.
No.
And connections.
You'd think so. That role alone suggests that.
Yeah.
Then fast forward to 2013, which, is the year of that devastating Yan earthquake.
So involved in charity oversight before the quake and reconstruction bidding after.
That's what the Sohu piece lays out. You can already see this.
And if you connect that to the bigger picture, well, you start seeing a potential pattern, maybe a public servant in these influential spots during critical times. And then later, the family's wealth grows.
It definitely makes you wonder.
Someone overseeing charity funds, then involved in reconstruction, they inevitably build up contacts, access, things that aren't immediately obvious.
Yes. Established in October 2014, a company with registered capital of 5 million yuan. Initially, it was under the name of Huang Yang Tiantian's uncle. And this is where it gets even more tangled. The article points out this uncle had a prior conviction, something to do with immigration consulting, apparently involving Huang Yang Tiantian's mother, too. He even served 5 years in prison.
Wow, okay.
Later, the legal representative for that film company changed to the mother. But here's the really crucial bit, according to Sohu. The father was still a civil servant when this company was founded.
Still in his government post.
Yes. And also, when the mother was apparently seen wearing a piece of Van Cleef & Arpels jewelry worth around
$500,000 yuan jewelry, while the father is still a civil servant and before he officially left his post.
That's the timeline suggested. It certainly raises questions about then.
That timeline is absolutely key, isn't it? The overlap between his public service career and these family business ventures, plus the high-value jewelry, it just fuels all the speculation about where the money originated. The Sohu article then mentions his eventual resignation from government work in 2017. He'd reached a specific official rank, Jinkiji.
So resigns from public office, takes over the company.
It paints this picture, right?
Yeah.
A family whose financial path seems really closely tied to.
But the Sohu piece doesn't even stop there. It also brings up another company, a biotechnology firm,
Oh,
established by Huang Yang Tiantin's mother in April 2020. So right at the start of the Wuhan COVID-19 pandemic. And this one had a registered capital of 10 million yuan.
10 million during the pandemic's outbreak.
Yeah. The article explicitly mentions the economic opportunities that sometimes arise from such events. It even uses a pretty loaded phrase, hush,
Which means?
basically profiting from national crises. It directly links the family's financial success, or alleged success, to both the Yanyan earthquake and the pandemic.
Wow. That's a really strong accusation.
It really is. One that carried a lot of weight and could definitely sway public perception even more.
Absolutely. It's a phrase designed to resonate deeply, suggesting, maybe exploiting national hardship for private gain. And the Sohu article, it then talks about the reported feelings of people in Iran.
What do they say?
Well, it claims residents felt they got minimal compensation after the earthquake, that they had to mostly fund their own rebuilding.
Right.
And then you contrast that story, people struggling to rebuild, with the reported compensation figure, something like 5,000 yuan for each death in the earthquake.
Just 5,000 yuan.
And then you see this image of a teenager wearing earrings worth 2.3 million yuan. You can absolutely understand the emotional reaction.
It's such a stark, almost unsettling contrast. And the article even says that people online started drawing parallels, comparing this situation to the case of Kwanwanding up in the north.
Yes. That comparison suggests this isn't seen as just an isolated incident.
It seems like it taps into a much broader public concern, maybe about wealth.
Yeah, these comparisons really highlight a deep-seated public expectation, I think, for transparency, for accountability, especially when big questions pop up about how significant wealth is made, particularly if there are connections to public service or national crises.
So where does it stand now?
Well, the Sohu article concludes by saying that the relevant departments in the Yan municipal government are reportedly taking it seriously. They've apparently launched an investigation.
An official investigation.
Yeah. With the hope, the article says, for a thorough inquiry and ultimately a...
So just to kind of recap where we've gotten to in this short time,
Yeah.
we started with a viral story, right?
Mm-hmm.
A pair of incredibly expensive earrings.
Mm-hmm.
And now we've peeled back layers looking at family history,
Yeah.
potential links to huge regional events like the Yan earthquake and the pandemic, accusations of profiting from crises, public anger, and now an official...
It really is. And it leaves you with a pretty significant question to think about, doesn't it? For you, the listener. What does this whole incident, as it's unfolding, really tell us about public expectations, for people in the spotlight and the kind of scrutiny their families now face?
That's a great point.
And what are the wider implications when those lines between, say, public service and private wealth seem to get blurry, especially when it happens against the backdrop of major societal events like earthquakes or pandemics?
Yeah, lots to think about there.
Definitely. As the story keeps developing, it's certainly worth keeping those different perspectives we talked about from the news reports, the opinion pieces, the online commentary. Keep them in mind as you try to form your own